Begin today the Gemara on Daf Beis Amud Beis, 4 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. We're in the middle of the conversation that there is between the Umas Ha'ilam, the nations of the world that come La'asad Lavai to demand a reward for what they did in this world. And the point that we're holding in the conversation is that the Goyim say to the Eibishter that when it comes to Yidden, Kafa Aleim HaKegigis, the Eibishter lifts the mountain over them like a barrel and forces them to receive the Torah. So they say to the Eibishter, why didn't you do that for us? You didn't force us to receive the Torah. So the fact that we didn't receive the Torah and we're not fulfilling the Torah, we're not to blame for this. Okay, so the Eibishter continues and tells them, Miyad Omer Lehem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Amud Beis, towards the bottom. Immediately the Eibishter tells them, Harishaynai Sashmiyuna. What happened before, they are going to let us know whether you really would have been dedicated to fulfill Torah. This Lashon, Rishaynis Yashmiyuna, is a continuation of the pasuk that the Gemara is quoting here, where the pasuk begins to say, Kol HaGoyim nikbetzu yachtav, all the Goyim gathered to the Eibishter, and so on. So the Eibishter says, let's see, regarding the mitzvahs that you did get. Did you fulfill those mitzvahs? Shanama v'Rishaynis Yashmiyenu. Sheva mitzvahs shekibaltem. So the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach, that you did receive. Where did you fulfill them? So you say that if you would have forced, if you would have gotten it like Yidden were forced to get the Torah, so then you would have fulfilled them. So how we see you didn't fulfill the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach? From where do we know that the Goyim did not fulfill Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach? Because the Tani Rav Yosef taught, it says in the pasuk, Omad v'yameidid oretz ra v'yater Goyim. The Eibishter measures the land, and Ra Vayater Goyim. So here the Gemara darshans the word Vayater Goyim means my Ra. What did the Eibishter see? Ra Sheva mitzvahs shekibla aleim b'nei Noach. The Eibishter saw the 7 mitzvahs that all b'nei Noach have to fulfill, and v'loi kimum, and they did not fulfill them. And kivin shaloi kimum, kivin, as soon as he saw the Eibishter sees that they did not fulfill them, Omad v'yitiran lehem. So the Eibishter was matter. He removed the obligation to fulfill the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach. This is the source that the Goyim did not fulfill the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach. But the Gemara asks on this, that's the simple pshat. So the Gemara asks right away in this, what does that mean? Is Gure, Isger, because they did not fulfill the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach, so they gained that now Hashem removes it, it takes away the obligation. In Kei Matzinu Chayte Niskar, that means when one sins, he gains by this, that now the Eibishter says, okay, you don't have to fulfill it. So Amar Berei de Ravineh. So explain that what it means is loymar to say sha'afal pisha mekayim enaisa. Even if they do fulfill the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach, ein mekablam aleim schar. They will not receive reward for this. So that when it says here haTorah, the Eibishter removes it. It doesn't mean that the obligation is still there. And if they don't fulfill, there will be a consequence. But if they do fulfill, though, they will not get reward for this. But on this as well, the Gemara asks, is there no schar for a guy that fulfills Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach, but what Tanya? We learned in the Braisa. Rab Meir said, Minayin shafilo oivik kechavim v'aisik b'Torah. Even a guy that learns Torah, that shehu k'kohen gadol, that he's compared to a kohen gadol. And this is referring to a guy that's learning about the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach that he has to fulfill. Otherwise, a guy is not allowed to learn any Torah. But so we see that he's learning Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach and he's fulfilling it, and he's like a kohen gadol. Talmud Lamed, the pasuk says, "Ashayase oisam ha'adam v'chai ben," that when ha'adam, a man, will do and fulfill this, he lives by it. Now, Kainim, Levim, Yisraelim, Loi Nema. It doesn't say, it's not referring to Yidden. It doesn't say not Kainim, not Levim or Yisraelim. Elo ha'adam. It says ha'adam ha'lamadata. From here we learn shafilo oivik kechavim. Even a guy v'aisik b'Torah, and he learns Torah, harehu k'kohen gadol. He's compared to a kohen gadol. So the diak in the pasuk here is a few points. First of all, it says, as the Gemara darshans, ha'adam. Taisvis here brings, this is a Taisvis here in a few places in Shas, that when it says in the pasuk Adam, that refers only to Yidden, because Yidden are called Adam, Adam Ela Elyon, they're compared to the Eibishter. When it says ha'adam with a hey, that includes even Goyim. Another point is, it doesn't say in the pasuk in a direct terminology speaking to Yidden, Ashetase oisam, that you shall fulfill. Eibishter speaking to Yidden. It says Ya'aseh, if they will fulfill. Ya'aseh oisam ha'adam, that implies that it's speaking about Goyim as well. And Taisus adds, when the Gemara here says that a guy that learns Torah is compared to a Kohen Gadol, that's what Drasha the Gemara says in a different place. The Torah is so precious. When one learns Torah, it's more precious than Pninim, which means a Kohen that enters Lifnai v'Lifnim into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Alright, so here you see, the Rebbe speaks about this and also in a Sikha, that you see from here the power of Torah. That it's not only about the Yid that is Chuyev to learn Torah and the special mitzvah of Talmud Torah, and that's why he becomes to a high level when he learns Torah, but it's the Maila of the Torah itself. When one learns Torah, he gets elevated to be on the level of a Kohen Gadol. So we see here that this applies even to Goyim when they learn about their Sheva mitzvahs. So how can we say that they don't get schar for learning their Torah? We see the great effect that the Torah has on them when they learn about their Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach. Ella, the answer is Lo Malacha. The pasuk that we quoted before, Vayater Goyim, means she'ein mekabel aleim schar k'mitzuva v'ayiseh. They don't get the ultimate schar. The ultimate schar is when one is commanded and he fulfills. Ella k'misha ein mitzuva v'ayiseh. The schar that they get is like one that's not commanded and he fulfills. The reward for one that is commanded and fulfills is greater than one that is not commanded and fulfills. And Taisus here brings the reason for this is because when one is commanded, so then it's a oil that he has, and he's always worried about fulfilling this, and there's a bigger Yetzirah not to fulfill. So when one is mitzvah v'aiseh, there's more of a struggle, and therefore there's more schar.
The excuse that they give that we weren't forced into it the way they did,
yeah.
We would have forced. But in the Medrash, the story is very explicit where it says. They ask what does Torah have in it, so Hashem gives an example that's connected their culture. Says no, we can't accept that.
Right.
Says, then he goes to all the nations.
Yeah, correct. That's what the Medrash says.
Really,
right.
It's really they rejected it.
True, but the Eibusher could have forced them to receive the Torah like Yidden. But here, the Eibusher is pointing out to them that even if they would have been forced to receive the Torah, they still wouldn't have fulfilled it. Because by Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach, the Eibusher gives it to them and they're forced to fulfill them. They have an obligation and they didn't listen. They don't fulfill the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach. By Yidden, the Kaf Aleim Har Kegigis works. Why? Because by Yidden, Kaf Aleim Har Kegigis Taka reveals the true entity of what Yidden are. They're on a level where a Yid has to fulfill a mitzvah because he's connected on a different level. That's the mitzvah of a Yid. So the conversation goes on. This is what the Goyim say to the Eibishter. Master of the universe, Yisrael Shekibluah. So you say that the Yidden, they accepted the Torah and they fulfilled it. Where do you see? Prove to me that Yidden over the generations that they fulfilled Torah. The Eibusher says, Ani made bem shekayim esatayra kula. I can testify on behalf of Yidden that they fulfilled Torah. So the Goyim say to the Eibusher, Rebbeinu Shalom, Klum yesh av shemeid al b'nai. Can a father testify for his son? So how can the Eibusher testify for the Yidden that are his children? Nechsiv b'ni b'chayri Yisrael. So the Eibusher says to the Goyim, Shemayim v'aretz yidu. Let heaven and earth testify on behalf of Yidden Shekayim as a Torah Kula, that they fulfilled the entire Torah. So Oimrim Lefana of the Goyim say, Rebbeinu Shalom, Shemayim v'aretz neigim beidusam. Shemayim v'aretz, heaven and earth that testify for Yidden, they can't. They're not impartial. They're gaining by this testimony. Why? Sheneva the pasuk says, Im loy berisi Yaimam v'layla chukos shemayim v'aretz leisamti. If not for Berisi, which is the covenant or the Torah, if Yidden would not accept and learn and fulfill Torah, then heaven and earth will not exist. The Amar Rav Shimon ben Lakish or V'Amar Rav Shimon ben Lakish, my dechsev. What's the pshat in the pasuk when it says by Sheshish Mebreshis Vayerev Vayeveke Yoim Hashishi? By all other days, it doesn't say with a hey. What's the Hashishi? The sixth day. Malamed shehisna Kadosh Baruch Hu Ma'aseh Bereshis. Eibusher makes the condition with creation. V'amar and Eibusher says, Im Yisrael makablim es Torah si mutiv. If the Yidden will receive the Torah is good, the world will exist. But v'im lav, what otherwise, ani achzer eschem l'toyu v'voyu. The world will disappear, will be absolutely nothingness. And v'hayin adam Chizkiah. Chizkiah also said, Ma'idich Siv, the pasuk says, Mishamayim hishmato din. From heaven, the Eibusher let us know din, which refers to Torah. And Eretz, the world, Yara, was afraid and v'shakata, and then it calmed down. What does this mean? It was afraid and it calmed down. Im yara, if the world is afraid, lama shakata, so then why is it calm? V'im shakata, if it's calm, lama yara, why is it afraid? Ela b'tchila yada. In the beginning, before the Yidden accepted Torah, the world is afraid that what's going to be with its existence. It only exists if Yidden receive the Torah. But then the world calms down because the Eibishter, because Yidden, that is, accepted the Torah. So from all these sources, you see that Shemayim v'Aretz are negei beis. They're not impartial. If they're going to testify that Yidden are fulfilling Torah, that's for their existence. That's what Taisus over here says. So then what do you need their testimony altogether? By the very fact that the world exists, that should be a proof that the Yidden fulfill Torah. Because if they wouldn't, the world would not exist at all. So Taisus says that the world's existence is dependent on Yidden accepting the Torah. When Yidden accepted the Torah by Matan Torah, then the world could exist. Whether Yidden are later on going to fulfill the Torah or not, that the world could exist even without that. That's what Taisus over here says. But they're still not impartial, because the fact that their existence was based originally on Yidden accepting the Torah, so therefore they're negei beta, so they can't testify about Yidden. Here, all these different Maimonic Chazal that it says, Rav Shimon ben Lakish and Chizkiah and so on, this is the source of this concept that's brought in Chassidus many times regarding the existence of the world. When you make a condition about something, the condition is not just an external thing. The condition really reveals what the essence of the existence l'chatchila is. The world, the pnimius of its existence, is only this condition. Without this condition, the world has b'chlal no existence of its own. Just like there's the concept b'chlal that's explained in Chassidus about the bittul of the worlds, that it's dependent constantly on the Eibishter creating it and so on. That's one point. But here there's another point, that the pnimius of the existence of the world itself is really just all for the sake of fulfilling Torah and mitzvahs, and otherwise the world mitzad atzma has no credibility to exist b'chlal. It's a very fundamental concept.
Beis Reishis.
Yeah, Beis Reishis is also another source similar to that. Okay, so now who's going to testify? So the Eibishter can't testify about Yidden fulfilling the Torah. It's a father and a son. The world can't testify because they're negei be'edus. The Eibishter tells the Goyim, Mikem yavayu, from amongst you, from amongst the Goyim, you can come via Idu be'em Yisrael and can testify about Yidden shekaimes ha-Torah kula, that they fulfilled all of Torah. And the Gemara goes through different times in history. Yavai Nimrod, let Nimrod come. V'yoid ba'Avram shlo yavad Avodas kechavim. Nimrod will come and testify that Avram Avinu did not serve Avoda Zara. Yavai Lavan v'yoid, let Lavan come and testify. V'Yaakov shlo nechshed ala gezel, that Yaakov, when he left from his father-in-law, he did not take even anything with him. After all the years that he was, 20 years that he was by Lavan, he didn't even take a tiny little thing. And Lavan came and looked through every single thing, and after, when he ran after him, and there was nothing that he had from him. The wife of Potiphar, let her come and testify that Yosef did no Aveda with her at all. Let Nebuchadnezzar come and testify that Chananya, Mishal, Azariah that Chananya, Mishal, and Azariah did not bow down to the tzelem that Nebuchadnezzar put up at that time and wanted them to bow down. The Taisus here about this, it says that this tzelem be'emes wasn't really an Avoda Zara necessarily. It was an andarte. It was this thing representing the might of Nebuchadnezzar, but they still did not want to bow down to this. Let Dar Yavish come and testify. He made a gzeira in his times that nobody is allowed to daven, and everyone has to only request from him. But nevertheless, Daniel in his times continued. He didn't listen to this gzeira and he davened to the Eibishter. And Yavi Beldad Hashuchi V'Tzeifer Hanamasi V'Alifas Hateimoni, who are all these individuals? So these are individuals that are actually mentioned in the beginning of Sefer Iyov. They were also prophets and they were friends of Iyov. And let them, v'ya'idu, this Eliyah ben Brachel Habuzi is not, he's taken out. Rashi says to take him out because he was actually a Yid. And we're looking for different people amongst the Goyim that should testify about Yidden. V'ya'idu behem v'Yisrael, and they could all testify about Yidden, shekaimu eskala Torah kula, that they fulfill Torah. And here the Gemara comes back to the pasuk where this all began. Shenemar, the pasuk that was quoted in Daf Beis Amud Aleph, the pasuk says, Yitnu eideyem v'yitzdaku, that when Mashiach comes and the Goyim will be arguing that they should receive a reward, they themselves will give testimony on behalf of Yidden to show that the Yidden are the ones that deserve the schar. Okay, so the conversation is over. They have nothing to demand reward for themselves, and the Yidden that fulfill Torah will be rewarded. But Amru Lafan of the Goyim say to the Eibusher Rebbeinu Shalei, Master of the universe, Tana lanu mirosh. Let's start now. Give us the Torah today, and give us a chance to fulfill the Torah now. And when I said it, we'll fulfill Torah. Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Eibusher tells them, Shaitim Shabaylam, fools in the world. You come now late. This is too late for this opportunity. Misha Torach be'erev Shabbos, Yechol b'Shabbos. One that prepares before Shabbos can eat on Shabbos. Misha Loi Torach be'erev Shabbos, Me'echen Yechol b'Shabbos. So how could you so the loss of love is Yom Shekulei Shabbos, and all the years before is the time to prepare and to do Torah mitzvahs. But now, once Mashiach comes, it's too late. But the Gemara concludes, Ella Afal Pikein. But yet the Eibusher says, even though you don't deserve a second chance at this point, but yet mitzvah kala yeshli. The Eibusher says, I have an easy mitzvah, the sukkah shema, and this is the mitzvah of sukkah. L'chu v'asu oisa. Go and fulfill the mitzvah of sukkah. And this will be the test to see if they're ready to fulfill Torah. Well, now the Gemara says, could you say that the Eibusher gives them this second chance and gives them the mitzvah of sukkah? But V'amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, what is the meaning of the pasuk where it says, Asher anoichi mitzavcha hayoim, and it says in the pasuk hayoim la saisam, that the Eibusher commands Yidden to fulfill the mitzvah today. What does it mean? Hayoim la saisam. That today in Olam Hazeh is the time when we fulfill Torah mitzvahs. V'loi l'macha la saisam. But l'macha, which means la'asad lave, when Mashiach comes in Olam Haba, that's not the time of fulfilling Torah mitzvahs. Hayoim la saisam v'loi hayoim lit l'schar. Today we fulfill Torah mitzvahs and we don't get the reward. So how could it be that the Eibusher is giving them a second chance? Ella, the answer is she'ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba betrunya im b'riyasav. The Eibusher does not come to do things in such a way that will be very difficult for people, that it'll be too difficult that you'll have an excuse why you didn't fulfill. So the Eibusher is going out of his way, even beyond the seder of the way it's supposed to be, to give them a second chance, so they shouldn't have an excuse to say that we couldn't, that it was out of our hands. Right? So therefore the Eibusher here is giving them a second chance to see if they'll fulfill this mitzvah. Now, v'amai korele mitzvah kala. Why is the mitzvah of sukkah referred to as an easy mitzvah? Mishum delespa chisarin kis, because it's a mitzvah that you don't have to spend a lot of money. You just find some wood and some schach, and you can make a small sukkah and sit in it. That's the Taicha. The Gemara says mitzvah kala. There's one place in the Rishimis where the Rebbe Taichas, it's different Pirushim, Mefarshim, B'shainim, speak about this lashon of mitzvah kala. The Rebbe Taich, the reason why it's called a mitzvah kala is because the way you fulfill mitzvah sukkah is different than every other mitzvah. Every other mitzvah, whatever possession, money you have to spend the money and then buy tefillin or give tzedakah. You're giving it away for the sake of the mitzvah. The mitzvah of sukkah is the way the mitzvah is fulfilled is you're eating and drinking or sleeping, whatever you do. Continue doing it for yourself, but just do it inside the sukkah. So you're not fulfilling the mitzvah by giving it away, doing something that's not your personal thing that you would have done otherwise. No, the mitzvah of sukkah is you eat and drink, and where that? In the sukkah. That's the mitzvah kala of sukkah. And adafka, this mitzvah is that test is going to test the goyim. So then miyad, what happens? So the goyim go and build a sukkah, and they build it on their rooftops. HaKadosh Baruch Hu magder aleim chama b'tkufas Tammuz. The Eibusher takes out the sun to shine very strong, like the tkufa of Tammuz. Right, the tkufa of Tammuz usually ends before the tkufa of Tishrei, but here the tkufa of Tammuz will continue to be hot and strong, the sun, even in the time of Tishrei. And then what happens is v'chol echad ve'echad mevayit b'sukkasa v'yetze. And they leave the sukkah, and they kick the sukkah, and they leave. Shenamar, and the pasuk here says, the goyim say, "Nenatka es meisriseimai v'nashlicha mimena v'seimai." Let's untie this knot. Let's untie this connection that we have to this mitzvah, and they leave the sukkah. So the Gemara says, why does the Eibusher do this? Magdir. The Eibusher comes and takes out the sun to shine very strong, to penetrate the heat of the sun, that they should leave the sukkah. But for Amrit, this whole thing started off here that we said that HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba betrunya im b'riyasav. The Eibusher is giving them a second chance because he doesn't want it to be something which is so difficult that there should be an excuse. Says the Gemara, Mishum di Yisrael Nami. This is the nature of this mitzvah as well. It's not unique only in this case, even by Yidden as well. Zimnin, the mashchalahu tkufas Tammuz. That sometimes the heat of the summer continues even into Tishrei. The calendar of the lunar calendar, the way it works is sometimes the heat of the summer does continue into the time of Sukkot as well, and the fulfillment of the mitzvah consists of the fact that even when it's hot, you sit in the sukkah and you fulfill the mitzvah. So the Kufat Kamis continues at Chaga until the time of the Yom Tov of Sukkot. And Avoda Zara, and there's pain, and you have to continue fulfilling the mitzvah. But what's the problem with the fact that they leave the sukkah when it's very it's painful to sit in the sukkah in such heat? But Rav said, if one has pain when he sits in the sukkah, you potter to sit in the sukkah. Says the Gemara, and he the potter, even if you potter, you don't have to sit in the sukkah. But biyute mi mevati, when a yid leaves the sukkah when it's raining or when it's too hot, does he go out and kick the sukkah? He leaves the sukkah, and the sukkah is a holy place where the Eibishter is, in the midst of sukkah. The fact that they kick the sukkah, that reveals the fact that the Goyim are really not interested in the mitzvahs. So miyad, immediately when that happens, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yeshiv, U'Mesachek Aleim. The Eibishter, after this entire conversation, almost a lot long over here, the Eibishter over here laughs on the Goyim and says, here the truth came out. After everything, and I gave you a second chance, and the Goyim kicked the sukkah, that expresses the previous that the Goy is not connected. Shanab the Pasuk says, Yeshiv Bashamayim Yischak V'Goymer. That the Eibishter in heaven sits and laughs at the Goyim at this conclusion of this whole thing. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, so Rabbi Yitzchak says, this, the Eibishter laughs is at that time. When this happens, and with this conclusion, this is the only time that the Eibishter laughs.
In the Mishnah, it brings out the opposite scenario, where the Yid comes to the master serving him, and because it rained, it's like the master kicked. Okay, and Chanami, but it doesn't say kicked. It says that it's shaykhun like kitten alpanav. Yeah, okay, true. So the yid leaves with if that's the case, the yid feels that the Eibishter is bringing rain in, and when he comes to the Mishnah Sukkah, so he leaves with a humility. He leaves with the machna, not the chas v'shalom to kick the sukkah. Okay, this last point that was mentioned there, that the Eibishter, the schayk that there is. So some say that Rabbi Yitzchak said this also on the Asad Lavai, but aha the Tanya. On this that it says in the Braise, Rabbi Yossi says La Asad Lavai Boan Rabbi Kechavim Misguided. That in the future when Mashiach comes and the Goyim see what's going on, so the Goyim come and want to convert and be Gadim. Now the question is, Umi Mekablina Minayu. At that point, would we accept any of the Goyim to become Gadim? But Tanya, but we learned that we don't accept any Gadim once Mashiach comes. And Kayetze by similar, there was a time in history before, like Kiblu Gadim, Loibi Me David, Loibi Me Shloim, not in the times of David HaMelech or Shloim HaMelech, when things were very good for Yidden. So you can't accept Gadim because they're not necessarily sincere. They're coming and they want to be Megai because they see the what's good for Yidden. Elo, so the Gemara explains what happens also Lavai. Shanasu Gadim Gerudim. They become Gadim that try to come and join Klal Yisrael on their own, and they're not really accepted properly. They go to some bezdin which is not a proper bezdin to be Megayah them, and they become Gadim, and then what they do is Manichan Tefillin. They start fulfilling mitzvahs like Yidden. They put on Tefillin B'Rashayim, Tefillin B'Rezayim, Tefillin Shorosh, Tefillin Shoyat, Tzitzis B'Bigdayin, and the Tzitzis Mezuzah B'Schayim. And then what happens? They behave like Yidden, and Kivin Sharayim Milchamis, Goygo Magog, and then they see when the war, the Milchama of Goygo Magog that will be lost at Love happens, so these Gadim, Grudim come and ask, Alma Basam, who are you coming to fight? What's this war all about? They say to them, Al Hashem Val Mashiach, we're coming to fight against Hashem and His Mashiach and the Yidden. Shanemar, the Pasuk says, Lama Raksha Goyim L'umim Yagurik, that the Goyim they're coming to fight and they make a commotion, and it's all the Rik, it's all for nothingness. So the Pasuk there continues, goes on to say, it's Al Hashem Val Mashiach. That's the conclusion of the Psukim there. And then when they see this, that now there's going to be a Muhammad against Yidden. So then they drop their mitzvahs and they leave. Shanema, as the pasuk there goes on to say, they disconnect, they drop their gatus. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yeshiv U'Mesachek. Then the pasuk says that the Eibishter sits and laughs at the Goyim for what happened over here.
And that's also in the same kapitel, in Tilim, kapitel base. Shanema, Yeshiv, B'Shamayim, Yitzchak, V'Goyim, the Eibishter laughs at the Goyim that wanted to be Gaidim when it was good for them, and then they dropped it when they see the Mulchamas. So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, and this Rabbi Yitzchak said, the laughter of the Eibishter is only at that time, and that day when it's proven that the Goyim are not really interested in being a get or accepting Torah mitzvahs. But at this point, the Gemara asks, Eini, is this true that that's the only time when you find this concept of Schaik Lamaila? Rav Yudah says in the name of Rav regarding the schedule of the day of the Eibishter, Kavayachol. It's 12 hours in the day. The first 3 hours of the day, Hashem is learning Torah. Shniyos, then there's the second set of the 3 hours, Yeshiv V'Danas Kaleilam Kulai. The Eibishter judges the entire world. And then Kivin Sharaya, Shenischayev Eilam Kloya, when the Eibishter applies the full power of judgment, so the whole world has no zuchus to exist, Bechlal, and the world will be annihilated. Then Eimin V'Kisei Adin V'Yeshiv Al Kisei Rachmim. Eibishter gets up from the throne of judgment and sits on the throne of mercy. And Shlishiyos, then the third part of the day, Yeshiv is on as called Elam Kuloi Mikarne Re'emim Ad Beit Sekinim. It's the Eibishter is sitting now on a throne of mercy, so he provides food or everything that's needed for the largest creature, a big animal that's called a Re'em, to the smallest little worm that crawls that's called Beit Sekinim. It's a name of a certain worm. And then the last part of the day, the fourth part of the day, Yeshiv u'misachik im Levyasan. The Eibishter sits and plays or laughs with the Levyasan. Shenem, as the pasuk says, Levyasan zeh yitzarta l'sachik by. The Eibishter is misachik with the Levyasan. So this is which is explained what this whole Indian means over here. All these different parts of the day. It's explained in Chassidus Barichas, this Indian regarding the Levyasan zeh yitzarta l'sachik by. There's a ma'amer from the Alter Rebbe and look at the Torah about what the Levyasan represents. The avodah of the tzaddikim in the world that are on the level of the Levyasan, and the Eibishter gets a special schaik, a special tainug of their avodah in the world. But the point is, the Gemara is asking, before we said that the only time that there's laughter lamaila, schaik, is by the Goyim when they have their downfall asad lavoi. And here it says every day, the last 3 hours of the day. With his creations, which refers to the Levyasan, or as I mentioned, Avodah of Tzadikim, that's every day. But Va'al B'Riyaisav, this the Eibishter has this chayk for or against his creation, the Goyim that have their downfall, that's a unique thing that is expressed only at that time, at the downfall of the Goyim Lasad Lovai. Now, Amalei Rav Achel, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, but from the time of the Churban Beis Hamikdash, ein schaik lakadosh baruch hu. This schaik that was mentioned before about every day that there's a schaik with the Levyasan, there is no schaik lamayla by the Eibishter. Minala and the lek schaik. What's the source that after the Churban there is no schaik? If you would say the source is midchsiv, the pasuk says Vayikra Hashem lekim tzvais bayemuhu lebchi ulemispei lekarcha v'gaimet. That on that day of the Churban, the Eibishter calls that it should be a day of crying and lamentations and to mourn the Churban of Beis Hamikdash. So Dilme, Hahu Yaime. This pasuk it says only on that day of the Churban it's a time of crying. V'sulai, but afterwards maybe the Eibishter there is a union of schaik every day. Ela d'chsiv, there's another pasuk where it says Meshkachech Yerushalayim Tishkach Yimini Tidbak L'Sheni L'Chikim Lois Gerechi. That the Eibishter says if I will forget Yerushalayim, the Eibishter never forgets Yerushalayim and the Churban Beis Hamikdash. So the Gemara says maybe all this means is Dilma Shikchuhu Deleka. The Eibishter never forgets about the Churban Beis Hamikdash. Avos Schaik Miyeke, but at the same time there is an Indian of Schaik Lamaila even after the Churban. Ella, the source is Meha from this pasuk where it says Hechsheisi Me'olam Achrish Es Apik V'Gaim, that from after the time of the Churban, the Eibishter Kavayachal is quiet and he does not express this happiness and this Schaik that there is at the time when the Beis Hamikdash was standing, and that's from the time of the Churban always. So now, if so, this was the schaik that there is every day in the last part of the day, but now after the Churban, when you don't have this schaik, so b'revi'iyah is my of it. In that fourth part of the day, what does the Eibishter do? Yeshiv u'melamed tinoikes shel beis Rava. The Eibishter sits and teaches the little children Torah. Who are these little children? These are the little children that pass away as children and come up. Their neshamas come up l'mayla, So these neshamas, the Eibishter teaches them Torah. Shanem, as the pasuk says, "Es mi yere day of es mi yavin shmua." Who does the Eibishter teach the day of Torah and then teaches them the shmua of Torah? Gumule michalav atike mishadayim. The children, the little babies that were nursing from their mother and they passed away young. Lemi yere day, lemi yavin shmua. Who does the Eibishter teach the day and the shmua of Torah? Legumule michalav atike mishadayim. To those little children or babies that died young and come up l'mayla. That's what the Eibishter does in the last part of the day. Now, if so, the Gemara asks, before the Churban of the Beis Hamikdash, when in the last part of the day, it says the Eibishter was misachik, he was playing and laughing with the Livyasan, with the Tzadikim, so then, man have a gamalahu. So who was teaching these little children Torah at that time? It says the Gemara, Ibai say metatron, the Malach Matat, he taught them Torah. Vibai say or ha'avid. The Eibishter did both at the same time, Mesachik with the Levyasan, and also teaching these Tanei Shel Beis Rab and Torah. This is regarding the schedule of the Eibishter Kaviyachol during the day. Or Balayla Yamayovid, what is the schedule, what does the Eibishter do during the night? Ibai Seime, or the answer is Me'en Yamama. The way the day is divided in the 4 parts, similar to the night as well. Vibai Seime, or by night, it says Reichiv, Al Kruv Kal Shaloi. The Eibishter rides in a light chariot of his, Vishat Bishmeine Asa Elef Elemis, and he flies through 18,000 levels of worlds. Shanem, as the pasuk says, Rechev Elikim Ribai Saim, that the Rechev, the chariot of the Eibishter, goes in Ribai Saim. Ribai Saim is 20,000. Alfei Shinon. So Al Tikri Shinon Ela She'enon. She'enon means that you have to take off 2,000, Alfei Shana means 2,000 that you deduct from the 20,000, which is the 18,000 worlds that the Eibishter is flying through with his chariot at night. Or a third Indian is Yeshiv Shemei Shira Mipichayis. The Eibishter sits and listens to the singing of the Malachim of the Chayis. Shenema Yomim Yitzava Hashem Chazdoi, Ubalayla Shira. And by night, the Eibishter listens to the song of the Malachim. Amar Rab Levi. Okay, the Gemara here begins a new Inyan. The connection to the Gemara before is not so clear. Maybe the Hemshech over here you see a little bit of the connection. So Rab Levi says as follows: Kol ha'paisik midivrei Torah, one that is learning Torah and he interrupts his learning. V'aisik b'divrei sicha, and instead he talks idle chatter. He talks other things, not Torah. Machil eloi gach le'resamim. So the punishment for this is that he will be given to eat coals that are called gachle risamim because it's from this wood that creates a very hot coal. Shenem, as the pasuk says, hakaitvin miluach alai siach v'shoyrish risamim lachmam. That the ones that are kaitiv means to cut, to stop. Those that are stopped from learning the siach of Torah, the words of Torah, v'shoyrish risamim lachmam. So then, again, they stop from learning Torah. The luach is the Torah and the siach, and instead they talk other things. Shoyrish Resamim Lachmam, they will be served to eat this coals that come from this wood that's called Resamim, which is very hot coals. Amar Reish Lakish said, Kol ha'isik b'Torah b'layla, one that learns Torah by night. HaKadosh Baruch Hu moishech alav chut shel chesed b'yom. So then the Eibishter brings upon this person this grace of kindness during the day. Shenever the pasuk says, Yoimam Yitzav Hashem Chazdai, that by day there is the chesed of the Eibishter, Balayla Shira Yimai. That's why. Why does a person have a chesed on him during the day? Because he's sitting and learning Torah, which is the Shira of the Eibishter at night. And my time Yoimam Yitzav Hashem Chazdai, Mishom the Balayla Shira Yimai. Because by night he's singing the words of Torah, so therefore by day there's a chut of chesed on this person. So here, this is the pasuk that's connected to before, that the Gemara quoted before. Iked Amri, another version of this is Amr Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish said, Kol ha'isik b'Torah ba'olam hazeh, a person that learns Torah in olam hazeh, hadayma l'layla, the world that we live in today is compared to night. HaKadosh Baruch Hu moishech alav chut shel chesed ba'olam haba. The Eibishter will bring upon him the chut of kindness in olam haba when Mashiach comes. Hadayma l'yayim, when Mashiach comes, that will be real day. Shenem, as the pasuk says, Yomam Yitzav Hashem Chazdai v'layla shirimi, a yid that learned Torah today will be zeichet to the chut shel chesed the Eibishter la'asad lavai.